So how did Ericka Redic end up the way Ericka Redic is today, is the question. I took my glasses off because I realized that you couldn't really see my eyes with the light reflecting off of my glasses. Hopefully that's better. You can actually see my eyeballs. We grew up very, lower middle class or poor, depending on the circumstance. When I was in high school, we moved to St. Albans, and it was just me and my mom, and we were in Section 8 housing and, buying groceries with food stamps and stuff like that. And that was really hard. That was a real struggle as a kid, to not know if you were going to have the resources that you needed for school or a winter coat. Was there going to be enough food on the table and things like that? I think that ultimately that's why I ended up going to college and studying accounting. I took an accounting class and I got an A without even trying, and the teacher was very encouraging. Hey, this is a subject that's normally really hard for people and you seem to find it really easy. You'll always have a good job. I got out of high school really damaged, honestly. We moved to St. Albans, and it was the first time I'd been out of school that had a football team. I always loved football when I was a kid, and I was like, I want to play football. I didn't understand that would make people really angry at me, and that it would become a problem. I might have decided on my own after a season or something that I didn't want to play anymore, because football is really hard. I might have even quit during preseason. Anybody who's been through two-a-days for football preseason knows exactly what I'm talking about. I threw my guts up. I was not the only one throwing up. If you played football and done two-a-days, comment below. But then I got pushback and I got told that girls don't do that now, whereas if I was going to quit on my own, now I'm not going to quit out of the principle of it. I just got harassed in classes. Teachers would allow other students to bully me in class. I went to the administration dozens of times. They ignored it. And then my senior year, we got new head coaches, and they pulled me into their office and they were like, you're going to quit or we're going to make your life miserable. And they did. We had vandalism on our house and my mom's car and a bunch of other stuff. And the harassment got so bad, I literally dropped out my senior year. By the time I hit my senior year, I'd already completed all of the requirements to get into college and do everything. So all I kept was DECA. When people talk about like what it's like to have to overcome bullying and hardship and things like that, when I say things like you have to make a decision to do something or not do something, it's not coming from a place of misunderstanding. I am literally the statistic. I grow up poor. I decide I don't want to be poor anymore. I go to college for a business degree. I don't really have anybody pouring into my life and being a mentor and guiding me. And I realize now that I never really dealt with that bullying. It made me really depressed. That's when I started doing some experimenting with drugs. I'd grown up a straight-laced kid, but then when I got to college, things started to change. One night in my mid-20s, I was drugged and sexually assaulted. Went to court. The case was thrown out for lack of sufficient evidence. And that was very traumatizing. I got prescribed Klonopins. I was having panic attacks and stuff because my agency had been taken away from me. And no one explained that to me. I didn't realize that in that experience, what happened was I lost my own sense of agency and power and control over my own life. And that really led to a further downward spiral of using substances to try to deal with how I felt. I get a job. I am an accountant for a small business in Vermont. And I met a person who was a cocaine user and a drug dealer. I was so miserable and so depressed. And all of a sudden I was around these people who seemed so happy and like, oh, everything was a party and everything was cool and everything was, oh man, it just sucked me right in and wrapped me up. And within 6 months, I was stealing money from my job to support my cocaine habit and using every single day. I am so sorry for the family that I worked for hurting them. And I am so grateful that they figured me out when they did. Because some people don't get found out or figured out or have their addiction interrupted as quickly as I did. Within 6 months, I got busted and arrested and charged with felony embezzlement. How many people watching here have been the victim of a crime committed by a drug addict? How many of you are a drug addict who's committed a crime? It is true that so much of the crime that we see here in Vermont especially is drug related, whether it's shootings or drug trafficking. Drug addiction is rampant in our community. I don't know very many people who haven't been touched in some way, whether it's themselves or their family member who's an addict or alcoholic. My sentence was 2 to 5 years, all suspended but 90 days, and probation until my restitution was paid in full. I was on work crew, so if you're on work crew for a day, you get a day reduced off of your sentence. I honestly don't know how much more than 47 days I could have stayed there. I was literally in a cell with a person who committed murder. So little small town Ericka who wrote bad checks, in the same cell with a murderer. I know that there's a lot of people advocating to not put women in prisons. I don't know which of us 5 that should not have been in there, but I can tell you that we were all guilty of what we had done. I will tell you that probably 90% of the women that were in prison for drug-related offenses. I can say for my own experience, it was one of the things that helped me get sober in the end, because I didn't want to end up in there for the rest of my life. That is not to say that we don't need to make some changes to our criminal justice system. That is not to say that the prisons couldn't use reform, because trust me, they can. It is not set up for rehabilitation. I can't tell you what a tremendous disservice the state of Vermont has done to anyone incarcerated by not allowing recovery meetings, Bible studies, yoga, and all of the other things that used to give people hope. Getting to go to 12-step meetings and Bible studies, even though I wasn't a Christian, there was a person who was willing to love me unconditionally, even with what I had done, and she was so kind. It was this little ray of sunshine. Why you would rob people of that is beyond me. Being without those things is far worse than getting COVID. And I can tell you that because I've experienced both. Vermont had the highest rate of overdoses, highest increase in overdoses and suicides in the country. So I got out of jail. I struggled for some time to stay sober. I took whatever jobs I could get. Then Colleen Montgomery asked if I wanted a second chance at my career, and I said yes. On March 20th, 2009, I gave my life over to the care of a higher power that I understood at the time. I had been to some meetings, and that's what they said. They said all I had to do was be willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of the God of my understanding. And I said, okay, because my life, the way that I've been living it, has not been working. So let's give this a try.